Liftoff, the FPV simulator, is now available on console. You can play Liftoff on Xbox and PlayStation. But Liftoff on console is not just Liftoff on PC translated over to console. There are some important differences, and some people who are experiencing those differences for the first time are annoyed, or maybe even a little worse than that. What we're going to do in this video is talk about the differences between Liftoff on console and Liftoff on PC and what you can do to, well, just basically get the best experience out of Liftoff on console. And on top of that, just sort of figure out whether Liftoff on console is actually a game that you want to play right now. Maybe it's not for everybody. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. The biggest challenge of playing Liftoff on console is the controller. You cannot, as of this time, play Liftoff on console with your RC controller. Liftoff is aware that this is a highly desirable feature and is working on doing what they can to make that happen. But suffice it to say, Microsoft and Sony don't let you just use any old peripheral with your program, even though the consoles are capable or would be capable of doing that from a software and hardware standpoint. And the Xbox controller is, let's face it, a pretty crappy form of control for RC. It's great for playing video games, but that actually gets to the heart of what we're talking about here. Because Liftoff on console is a simulator, but it is a simulator on a console, and in many ways, it makes the most sense to think of it as a video game, not a pure RC simulator. So what I want to do here is put the game into full manual acro mode, like a pure simulator, and try to fly it with the Xbox controller, and let's see how that goes. Yeah, it doesn't go very well. The spring-loaded throttle might be okay to deal with, but the biggest challenge is the motion of the sticks. The sticks are very short. There's just not a lot of precision. And that, combined with the fact that, at least in career mode, you have locked rates. You can't change the rates in career mode to make it a little easier to fly. You just, as soon as you deflect the stick, it just flips over. I know that there's people out there who have practiced a lot and maybe do a good job flying with it, probably Lugus employees. But as somebody who is used to being very competent flying a quadcopter, starting out, it was just very, very frustrating experience. At least some of this difficulty is my fault because I'm using the settings of the game incorrectly. You can see right here I'm flying in third-person mode, and in third-person mode, the camera stays flat and follows the drone as the drone pitches forward or back, left and right. That is not how FPV pilots are used to seeing the camera work. We are used to tilting the camera using the sticks. So the first thing I need to do to make my life easier if I want to fly in a more pure FPV mode is switch from third person to first person view. There is a purpose for third person view. We'll get to that a little later in the video. The way that you switch it is by pressing the right bumper. Okay, immediately this is way better, but it's still got a long way to go before I would call it good. The sticks are still really sensitive, the throttle is still really hard to deal with. What can we do about that? Liftoff has a whole bunch of assist modes that help you fly better, and the one we're going to look at here is limited acro, which is acro, but it limits how far you can turn over. If you've ever flown Betaflight, this is the same as acro trainer mode. I didn't find this to be that helpful because the sticks are still so sensitive that even though you don't flip over, you hit the limit pretty quickly and it's difficult to fly. I think a lot of pilots who are used to FPV are going to be resistant to using these assists, but you got to think you don't fly with an Xbox or a PlayStation controller in real life. This is a whole different experience, and it's probably better to think of it more as a game experience than is a pure simulator experience. So we're going to turn the assist level to full assist. And that means that instead of flying the quadcopter with the joysticks like we would normally do, we're going to use right trigger to go forward and left trigger to brake and go back as if we were like driving a freaking car. The altitude will be adjusted using the left stick to go up and down, and the left stick will turn using the yaw axis. The roll axis, the throttle, everything else will be manually managed by the simulator. And immediately you can see things get weird because the quadcopter is pitching itself forward and backward. As I give the input to speed up and slow down or ascend and descend, it's pitching forward and backwards and the camera is going crazy. This is the time when we need to switch to third-person view. Then as the quadcopter pitches forward and back outside of our direct control, we'll just be looking behind it and basically flying the camera behind the quadcopter. And this works okay. It's different. It's not like flying a quad and it takes a little bit of time to get used to, but it starts to become a kind of enjoyable video game experience. It's a case where it's different enough from the thing that you're used to that you can appreciate it for what it is rather than what it isn't. Now, if you really want to embrace the full video game experience, set altitude to hold altitude, which I had in the last clip, but also turn on checkpoint altitude. And what that's going to do is cause the quadcopter to automatically climb or descend to the altitude of the next checkpoint. In other words, you basically just driving the quadcopter like a car at that point with the right trigger and the yaw stick. And if you're thinking to yourself, that's not a freaking quadcopter simulator, you're right. But remember that the goal of Liftoff is not just to be a very good simulator for people who are very good at flying drones. Especially Liftoff on console, one of the goals is to reach out to people who have never experienced FPV. Hi, if you're watching this video. And to show them that FPV exists and is fun. And maybe the way to do that is to basically turn an FPV drone into a car that you drive with the right trigger and the yaw stick and branch out from there. There are many paths up the mountain, and some of them don't involve manually controlling your altitude. What should be the takeaway of this video then? One of the takeaways of this video is that if you're looking for a pure simulator experience where you can use your controller, at least as of today, PC is the place to be. However, at some point in the future, that may change. If you are going to play on console, one way to approach it is to do like I'm doing now and just put it in full assist mode with checkpoint altitude and just play it like a straight arcade racer. Just imagine you're playing F-Zero on your Super Nintendo. I'm old. I had a SNES. It's fun this way. I started having a lot of fun and just enjoying, trying to get better times and find better lines without having to do the whole full manual experience. If you do decide to do the full manual experience, remember you can adjust the rates. I would suggest try to turn the rates down to about 300 or 400 degrees per second. That'll give you more sensitivity on the sticks. Another thing you can do is you can buy extensions for the gamepad controllers, and that may give you a little more precision. You could turn the rates down, but not in career mode. They're locked in career mode, so unfortunately. But for racing, you can play with the rates, or for freestyle. Finally, another thing is by pressing up and down on the D-pad, you can adjust the up tilt of the quadcopter's camera, and that can change how fast or slow you go when you are at center throttle, and that can make it a little easier to manage the spring-loaded throttle. That's going to do it for this video, though. I hope this has helped you get the most out of Liftoff on console. Happy flying. What are you doing in here? The least you could do is subscribe or join my Patreon or, here's another video I picked out for you. Jeez.